Hey, my name is Michael Lodge, and I'm the speaking pastor here at Cascade Community Church. And I'm so glad that you've found this video, and I hope that it helps you understand the love of God and draws you into living life with Him. But I want to encourage you, don't let this be a substitute for being plugged into the local body. Wherever you are, find that connection. And if you're here in Monroe, we cannot wait to live life with you at church. So come and get plugged in.
Good morning, Cascade. My name is Michelle Newell, and I serve as the Women's Director here at Cascade. Welcome. I am so excited that you are here. If this is your first time joining us, we have a digital Connect card in the description of this video. We would love for you to fill this card out. This Connect card will help us get to know you better, and it will also help us share more about who we are as Cascade with you. This digital Connect card is also a great place for prayer requests or to ask questions, so don't hesitate to fill it out. In recent weeks, you may have heard us talking about some upcoming changes about our online services, but we want to share one more time that starting next week, our Sunday morning services will be posted and available Monday mornings at 9 a.m. These services will still be available on our Facebook page and YouTube channel, and we look forward to sharing those services virtually with you from the Worship Center. So be sure to tune in at 9 a.m. on Monday mornings. This summer, many of you jumped right in to serve during our Serve Monroe campaign. We want to say a big thank you to you. Your impact was felt all throughout our community. We are going to continue to serve Monroe this fall through Socktober. Yep, Socktober. We are looking for warm socks, fuzzy socks, colorful socks, wool socks, you name it, socks of all kinds. From kid socks to adult socks, we want to bless our community's socks off with brand new socks for those who are in need as we head into cold and winter months. As you bring those socks in, you can place those in all of our donation bins that are around Cascade. So let's overflow those bins with socks. As you may have heard, many of our Cascade ministries have also already kicked off for fall, which is so fantastic. But don't worry, there is still a place for you here to get connected. Our student and young adult ministries are excited to meet you, to get to know you, and also reconnect. Our women's and men's groups are also still open to gather and get involved with. So come, we have a place for you. You can also check out our list of community groups available on our website. Also, men, don't forget that men's retreat is this upcoming weekend. So sign up, men. And women, encourage those men in your life to register and be a part of a great weekend of encouragement and connection. Registration is still open, so go to our website to register. We are about to jump into a time of worship through song in just a minute. So as you're able, please stand with us as we worship our Lord and Savior together. A little later in the service, we'll also be taking communion together as a family. So press pause, gather those elements for communion, and we will take that together after the message. Let's now enter into a time of worshiping God through song and praise.
Worship our King. Come, let us bow at His feet. He has done great things. Oh, see what our Savior has done. See how His love overcomes. He has done great things. unshakable. Hallelujah, you have done great things. Hallelujah, God, above it all. Hallelujah, God, unshakable. Hallelujah, you have done great things. You've done great things. Oh, hero of heaven, you conquered the grave. You free every captive and break every chain. Oh, God, you have done great things. Sing, dancing, your freedom, awake and alive. Oh, Jesus, our Savior, your name lifted high. Oh, God, you have done great things. You have done great things. Oh, God, you do great suddenly articulate with 1,000 tongues that lift one cry. Then from north to south and east to west, we'd hear Christ, oh, be magnified. Were the whole earth echoing his eminence, his name would burst from sea and sky. From
Good morning. Welcome to Cascade Community Church Online. So glad that you can gather with us, and it's so good just to know that Jesus' word is going out all over the world through this medium. And next week, we look forward to inviting you into the worship center to experience what is going on there. It's going to be an incredible step forward. We're really excited about that, especially in the context of the Gospel of John. We started this a couple of weeks ago, and today we're looking at this incredible passage at the beginning of chapter 2, Jesus' first miracle. And listen to this. This is the first of his miracles, the first of his signs that Jesus did at Cana in Galilee. And he manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. All right, so pop quiz, what was Jesus' first miracle? All right, yeah, turning water into wine. Like most people that maybe don't even read the Bible or are super familiar with the word, with Jesus, they know that at some point, maybe they knew it was the first miracle, that Jesus turned water into wine. So what event was Jesus at when he did that? All right, good job. He was at a wedding, right? So Jesus made water into wine at a wedding. Now, why did Jesus do this? You know, if you said because they needed wine, because they ran out of wine, you're wrong. That you missed it. Jesus was proving to the world here. He was showing the world. He was using this wedding almost as a life allegory to what his purpose was here for. That he is the life of the party. Not just the life of the party of the wedding, but the life of the party of our life. Like Jesus is the life of the party. If you've been to a wedding, you know there's generally like either one or two people that are just the life of the party. That person is not me, okay? I love stepping in and doing weddings and performing them, but if I just have to go to a wedding, especially if there's dancing involved, I get super awkward and I just want to hit it, leave, get out of there. But I've got a friend in college, like he was the life of the party. Everybody wanted him at every event. He'd step into the room and just bring everything to life. The party had started when he had gotten there. And I think since then, he's been the MC at many weddings and has helped carry the life of the party. You know who I'm talking about. You experience those kinds of people. Well, Jesus was stepping into this to say, I am the life of the party. And he used this miracle as a way to show people that. Look at this. If you look at John chapter 20 to the very end, listen to what Jesus said about his miracles and signs. It says, now Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this gospel. But these are written, they are carefully selected so that you may believe that Jesus is two things, the Messiah, the Christ, the Redeemer, and the Son of God. The fully God, fully man, the divine man, then that by believing you may have life in his name. So why did Jesus do this miracle? It wasn't just to give them wine because they ran out. He did this as a sign to show everyone that he was both of these things, that he was the Son of God. He was fully man and fully divine, fully God. There is power and explanation only found in him. Not only was he the fully man, fully divine person, the Son of God, but he was also the Messiah. So the story of redemption, that he was the person to redeem these people from the oppression that they were under and lead them into light. Both of these are very important because when you believe and know that Jesus is fully man, fully God, he is the divine Son of God, and he is the Redeemer, he is the Messiah. That's why these things were written, so that you might believe in him and then find life. So as we unpack this miracle, there's so much here that Jesus was doing. Everything that happened, every detail was pointing to these two things so that everyone that was at this party could eventually believe and find life in the name of Jesus. This is amazing. I'm excited to jump into this. So go back to verse 1 and let's start unpacking this. And just in this first sentence, you see so much here already. It says, on the third day. On the third day. Now, the Jews knew when weddings happen, they happen on the third day, and there's a reason for that. And John wanted to highlight that because as John did in chapter 1, he was connecting this story to cosmology, to creation, how we see God and the creation of man and the order and the design that Jesus made at the beginning of time. On the third day, when you study this in creation, the third day is the only day that was doubly blessed. God made creation and he made things. And at the end of that day, he said, that is good. This is good. But on the third day, he says it twice. This is good. This is very good. So John was connecting this day with creation to help us frame it and understand that God has a big story that's happening here. And Jesus is connected to that. And it was at a wedding, something that's beautiful about Jewish weddings is that they show things, they reveal things, they're symbolic of so much. We're not used to this in our culture, but the Jewish culture was rich in meaning. And they chose to have their wedding on the day of double blessing to connect it to the middle of creation. Their weddings were 7 days. On the first day, the soon-to-be husband would approach his wife and say, it's not good that man should be alone. I need you to complete me. I need you to be able to glorify God together. We are called to bear his image, but we can only do that in his design when we come to him and we are joined together before him. Then we are complete. Then we bear the fullness of his image and creation. Has been joined together. Man was made differently than everything else to bear the image of God. And the wedding was a testimony of that story, that this is the way that God designed it. There's no other way to create and to come before God and to be able to be joined together and breathe life into another person and to see the symbol of what it means to bear the image of God together. So the wedding was the story of creation. And it was also the story of the hope of redemption. The wedding story, the wedding ceremony, everything was built to symbolize what it means for God to eventually step into the human race one day and to provide the Messiah, the hoped-for Redeemer, to bring this about. To bring about redemption for all of mankind. The wedding was a symbol of that, not only just of creation, but also the story of redemption. And this is when Jesus chose to step into this story. On the third day, at the center of this wedding at Cana in Galilee. Now that detail is very important too, because in the Old Testament, there are prophecies in Isaiah and in Amos that something is going to happen in Cana around Galilee that is connected to the story of redemption. That's one of the reasons why the Pharisees set up one of their major schools in Galilee, because they knew and they hoped that the Messiah would one day do something there. And now we find ourselves there. And if it wasn't already obvious enough that this is a story about creation, cosmology, the order of man and woman come together in marriage, the story of redemption in Galilee, then they emphasize the point that the mother of Jesus was there. It's funny, before Jesus is mentioned, before his disciples are mentioned, he starts by highlighting the fact that his mother was there. And that's another call out to the story of redemption. You go back to the Old Testament. Every redemption story starts with the woman. When you think about Moses, the story of Moses started with the two midwives pulling him out, and the Redeemer, the Messiah, the picture of Moses saving the Jews from Egypt starts with those two midwives. You think of Hagar and Sarah and Isaac. The women were there and present, Hosea and Gomer, Ruth and Boaz. All of these stories, whenever a woman is mentioned, it's a story of redemption. So John is making the point abundantly clear. Marriage has always been a reflection of bearing the full image of God since the beginning of creation, all the way to the end of the story and his redemption in our lives. This is like a mic drop sentence. Like he says all this to set it up and to frame everything that we're about to see. So the story of redemption, Jesus is stepping into this marriage that signifies and symbolizes the richness of creation and redemption. But it also highlights and points out the brokenness of creation. Well, listen to this. It says, Jesus was also invited to the wedding, as if that was just kind of a secondary note. There's this guy, you may have heard of him, Jesus. He was also invited to the wedding with his disciples. Now, when the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." All right, now full disclosure here. We're talking about wine, the alcoholic beverage that people drink in the New Testament. I grew up in a very conservative faith and background and denomination, and we were often told, that maybe this was grape juice, or maybe this was a little high C poured into some water or something. This is wine, and wine is connected to the Jewish culture in a significant way. It was called the simcha. It was the source of joy and life. This is what we celebrate for. Wine was the symbol, and it was the life in the midst of the party. And it was not only just the symbol of joy and fullness of life, but it was also the sign of sanctification. It was the sign of a covenant. And right before they would say their vows on the third day, the husband would give a cup of wine to the wife, and that was their way of sharing this covenant with each other. And they would say Makudeshet li to each other, which says, "I am sanctified to you, and you are sanctified to me." There's a covenant happening right here around wine. Wine, joy, life, sanctification, covenant. And they ran out of wine. There was no wine. I mean, you can go back in the first century and find lawsuits that were recorded over this ultimate party foul. There was no wine. So what was this saying? Mary was approaching Jesus saying, this marriage, the foundation of this marriage is broken. It's full of shame and dishonor. There's no joy at this wedding. There's no life in this wedding. There can be no sanctification. There can be no covenant in this wedding. Do you hear the fullness of what's being said there? Mary's coming to Jesus saying, this is unredeemable. There's a problem here. It's huge. And then Jesus says something. He says to her, "Woman," which is a respectful word. Don't try to pull that on your wife and say, "Woman." That's not what Jesus was saying here. That word was full of respect and honor. And he says, "Woman," or "Madam, ma'am, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." And his mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now, what Jesus was saying here when he said, "My hour has not yet come," Mary knew what he was talking about, because Mary knew from the very beginning when Jesus was a little baby what he was meant to grow up and do. And Jesus was telling her, my hour of ultimate redemption is not here yet. And Jesus was saying, I'm not here to fix all of these problems and to fix the problem of this marriage. But then he says this, saying that one day, if you just turn the pages over just a couple of pages, Mary, in just a couple of years, what I'm going to do is going to fix this problem. When I solve the redemptive story, when I redeem humanity, that redemption will affect everything. So the ultimate fix is coming, but then Mary knew, all right, well, you're going to do something about this. And Jesus steps into fixing this problem. This marriage was in trouble, and it was an allegory. It was a symbol of the brokenness in our lives, how our lives, our marriages, and every other part of our life was broken without joy, without life, without sanctification, set apart from the covenant. We needed something to fix this problem in our lives, and this was Jesus' way of showing the world who he was. Look at what happens next. So there's brokenness, lack of joy, lack of covenant, lack of sanctification in our lives. And then he says this, now there were 6 stone water jars. For what? For the Jewish rites of purification. That speaks directly to the broken creation, for our need of a covenant, for our need of sanctification. The Jews tried to fix that problem by addressing the problem with Jewish rites of purification. The servants that were standing by these water jars, as people would come in, they would take water out and fill it in basins. And they would wash people's feet and wash people's hands, because people wanted to be clean coming into this precious ceremony. So their sins, and then they would have this change in status where they were coming to the wedding impure, but then they would be cleansed by this water so they could come into the wedding pure. The mitzvah would happen where they would take this water and they would baptize the woman. They would baptize the man in it so they could come and they could be made pure and stand before God. These Jewish rites were used to try to change the status of people from impure to pure. They were trying to fix the problem that began at the beginning of creation. So each of these 6 water jars that were there, and this word 6 was important because this number on the 6th day was a connection to creation again, when man was created and when man was not alone and he needed woman to complete the image of God. On the 6th day, when the fall would happen and eventually they would fall out of right relationship with Jesus, the number 6 called back to all of that. 6 was also the letter Vav in the alphabet, which is the connecting letter, which speaks of man connecting with woman and humanity connecting with God, and how this is a broken system. Like in these jars, in these 6 jars, all of that is pictured and framed for the people that are reading and experiencing and seeing this happen. And 6 is also the number that's associated with grace. So can you get all of this? Like all of this is going on, these 6 jars that speak of broken creation coming together to be formed in the image of God and be connected to God, these jars filled with grace. Jesus said to his servants, fill these jars with water. And they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, now draw some water and take it over to the master of the feast. So these 6 jars that are filled with grace, filled with water, that's man's attempt to purify humanity. In a nanosecond, Jesus changes these waters that have been filled abundantly to the brim with grace. This water, Jesus' creation, was turned to wine. Now think about what Jesus was saying there. Jesus was saying like creation is broken because of the fall. Like Jesus was there at the beginning. In the beginning, he created all things. He created water. And man tried to use water as purification. And Jesus said, if creation is mine, and if I have divine power over creation, then I can take what is broken and I can recreate it. I have power over creation. And in that moment, that water was transformed, was recreated, and turned into wine. Do you see the power? Like, why did Jesus choose to do a miracle this way? Jesus could have just called DoorDash and just had a ton of wine delivered to the party, and just miraculously, that probably would have been solved, right? Jesus could have found other ways of meeting this problem, but Jesus wanted to demonstrate his divine power. Remember, the signs and the miracles were for 2 purposes: to elevate Jesus and to show that he was unlike any man, that he had the power to do what only Jesus in his divinity could do. And in that second, Jesus exercised power, divine power over creation. And he changed, he restored, he redeemed creation, and he turned it into wine, the symbol of joy and life and covenant, and the symbol of his blood one day. And that is where purification is really found. You see what Jesus is doing here, exercising his power to show his redemption. And not only did he have power over creation, but he had power over time. Look at what happens next. Look at this incredible power that Jesus demonstrated when the master of the feast, when the sommelier, when the wedding coordinator, the person who knew everything that was going on, set everything up. He was sweating bullets. He was in despair because they had run out of wine, but now this new wine has been brought to him. And when the master of the feast tasted the water that had now been turned into wine and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the master of the feast called the bridegroom and said to him, everyone serves the good wine first, and when people have drunk freely, then the poor wine, but you have kept the good wine until now. Do you hear what John is saying here, what the master of the feast is saying here? This is the best wine I have ever tasted. This is the best wine of the party. Where did you get this wine? How old is this wine? If you know anything about sommeliers, these experts of wine, some of them are so knowledgeable about wine, they can smell wine. And then they can tell you just by smelling it how old the wine is, what kind of casks they were aged in, what location in the world, down to the vineyard that the grapes were grown in. Just by smelling it, they can automatically tell you everything that was going on and how old the wine is. And here the sommelier, this master of the feast, is like tasting this wine, and he's like, this wine, how long has it been aging? Where did it come from? This is the best wine I've ever tasted. It had the appearance, it had the depth, it had the flavor of beauty, of aged wine. But Jesus had the power to make it in a second. Jesus was demonstrating not only power over his creation, but the power that he had over time. He was demonstrating his power, showing the world something is happening right now that only I can do in my divinity. And I want you to see that so that you can trust me to redeem your broken life. If your marriage is hopeless and broken and lacking in joy in life, Jesus is stepping in here to show you, if I have the power over creation, if I have the power over time, if I have the power to recreate and turn water into wine, then can I have the power to redeem and restore your life and breathe life into your broken marriage? But not only just into our marriages, but into any part of our broken life. Jesus was using this symbol to not only demonstrate and show the world that he was the life of the party. This story is rich in depth and meaning. Everything is connected to his divinity, his power, and his hope to redeem and restore creation. Expressing this so that we can place our faith and trust in him to change our lives forever. He is divine. He is fully man, fully God, and he has the power to redeem us. He is the life of the party, and he has come to breathe life into every area of our lives. Jesus was using this miracle as a foundation to set up every other miracle that was to come and to show them, like what you are about to see, what you are seeing now is defining the purpose and the reason why I am here, that you may believe that I am the Son of God. I have divine power, and I have come to redeem your life. Believe in me so that I can breathe life into you. Jesus is the life of the party. But what do you do with that life? Something I love about the story is that there's different layers of revelation. There's different people who are experiencing and meeting Jesus. Some are just coming and seeing, and they really don't know what's going on, but they're experiencing a wedding like they have never experienced before. But they have no clue what's really going on, but they are experiencing life. There's some people like the servants that are a little bit closer to Jesus, and they see what's going on, and Jesus is giving them an invitation. Do you really understand what's going on? Everybody else is missing it, but you're seeing it. The servants are seeing what's going on. And the disciples, they are at a front row seat, and Jesus is explaining to them and showing them what he's doing in a way that's showing them, like, I want you to share in this, and I want one day for you to learn how to do this yourself. And then John is also writing the story as a way to pass it on. So when we look at this, I want to ask you this question: what do you do with the life of the party? When you think about these different layers of people that are experiencing all of this, which one are you, and how are you called to experience this? So again, maybe you're like these people that are just coming to the party and they're coming to see who Jesus is, and they're just experiencing life. Like, there are people that are here and they were going to leave this wedding and forever be changed. This is the wedding that they were going to compare the rest of the weddings they would ever go to, and no other wedding was going to compare to this. Because they would remember the crisis that happened, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, maybe they thought it was planned, maybe they thought it was just, a gimmick, but out of nowhere, the best wine they'd ever tasted had shown up, and the life of the party really kicked into gear. They experienced something that was amazing. They saw something that was different. They felt something that they wanted to be a part of. But Jesus didn't sit everyone down and said, all right, let me do a little Bible study and fully explain to everyone what's going on. Because Jesus knew sometimes people just need to experience first the goodness of who he is. And after they've really connected deeply with that, then eventually someone would come back and explain to them, let me tell you what really happened at that party. And for some of them, maybe reading this gospel was the first time that they read it and they remembered the wedding and were like, wait a minute, I was there. I experienced that. And now I fully understand what Jesus did and how he was the life of the party. Then they come alive. So maybe for you, like a lot of times when we think about going in and witnessing at work or telling people about Jesus, we feel like every day we've got to go in, we've got to share the gospel, we've got to hit it hard, hit people with the Bible over the face, knock them out, right? Like we feel like that's what Jesus wants us to do, but sometimes he just wants us to go to work and be the life of the party. Sometimes he wants us to go into these places and just reflect his nature, to glorify him, to make much of him, just in the way that we live our lives, the way that we handle stress, the way that we handle our job, our work ethic, our conversations, the way we spend our money, the way we demonstrate our love and our marriages and our relationships, that people look at us and they see something different. 1 Peter 3:15 says, always be ready to give a reasonable explanation for the hope that people see in you. Hope, this understanding of joy and life that you have. When you go to work and all of your conversations that you're having, like there's a lot of conversations that are going on right now. Many that are filled with stress and anger and bitterness and just this vile response to everything going on in this world. What does it look like when you're the only one stepping in and your response is confidence, hope, peace, and joy? And people start looking at you and they're just like, why are you not shaken by everything that's going on in this world? Like, why are you, what are you holding on to that's giving you joy and hope and satisfaction in life? When people look at your marriage and they see something different, when you're able to be the expression of Jesus in so many different ways, people look to you and they experience what these people experienced at this wedding, at this party. They experienced life and joy and sanctification. They just didn't even know where it was coming from. And maybe that's what you need to be doing for the world. Some of the other people, like the servants, like I said, Jesus said to them, like he was demonstrating, I want you to dip into the water. I want you to see firsthand this transformation. I want you to see the power that can come only from me. I want you to understand what redemption really is all about. This was an invitation to the servants, not only to see, but to ask the questions like, is Jesus really the Messiah? Is he really divine? And Jesus would often give this invitation to follow me. And maybe for you, as you're reading this and you're thinking about, can you even demonstrate to people to come and see? Maybe for you, you have to ask the question, am I following Jesus? Am I following him? And am I giving him the opportunity to breathe life into me? To breathe redemption and sanctification and joy, for me to experience the life that Jesus has in his way, in his design, in his understanding? Am I finding life in Jesus? Because we find that when we follow him. And this story is a beautiful picture of that. These 6 jars, 20 gallons, 30 gallons of water turned to wine. Do you understand the impact of what that has? Jesus was saying, I don't just want to barely give you a little bit of life. I don't want to give you just a little bit of sanctification. I don't want you to have just a little bit of joy. I'm going to fill it to the brim. Now think about this, like if you just do a little bit of math, how much of this amazing, life-changing, joy-filled wine did Jesus provide? 30 gallons, 20 to 30 gallons. If you just put that in half, what was averaged around there, you'd have about 150 gallons of wine. You can fill up a hot tub with that much wine, which is really gross. Let's not think about it that way. But if you do the math, this is what you find. That's 750 bottles of wine. Now, this wasn't like $2 Chuck wine. This was like high quality. So this is like $40 to $50 of wine in each bottle. So when you do the math, that's over $6,000 of wine that Jesus made appear out of nowhere. That was more wine than this party knew what to do with. They've already had some, and now the best wine had come, and people barely even have rooms for it, but they taste it and they enjoy it. It's an abundance. It's lavished for them. They have more than what they know they can do with, and that's what Jesus wants to do in your life. In Colossians chapter 3, he says, you have died to yourself. Your old life is gone, and now your new life is found in me. And when you find me, I will be glorified in your life. What does that look like? In Ephesians chapter 3, we hear that we trust him who's able to do more than we could ever think is possible. He is able to do lavishly, abundantly more than we could ever hope and imagine because of the great power that is at work within us. When Jesus asks you to follow him and to find life in him, he wants you to find the fullness, the abundance of life done in his way. And that's what he wants to lavish on you. Are you following Jesus? Are you finding him in the midst of this story and trusting him as the divine creator, the author of all things and all time? And he wants to lavish grace on you. He wants to bring your marriages alive. He wants to bring your relationships alive. He wants to bring every area of your life alive in him. That's what it means to follow him, to partake in this, and to be a part of this story. Is Jesus calling you to follow him a little closer and to trust him to breathe life into these different areas of your life? Come and see. Follow me. Maybe Jesus is calling you to share his name. Jesus was telling his disciples, watch what I'm doing, because one day I'm going to ask you to fish for men. I want you to share this with everyone else. And this is a message that has got to leave Galilee. It's got to go from Cana to Galilee, from Galilee to the rest of the world, to Jerusalem. And from Jerusalem, it's going to spread to all nations. Something is happening right here in Cana. And disciples, I want you to be a part of spreading that to the world. Come and see who I am. Follow me and let me breathe life into you. Then I want you to take that life and I want you to share it with the world. That is a message that we often miss here, but it's abundantly clear. Listen to what John says here. This, the first of his signs, Jesus did at Cana in Galilee. And he manifested, he was magnified, he was glorified here. And his disciples believed in him. And after this, he went down to Capernaum with his mother and his brothers and his disciples. And they stayed there for many days. Now listen to what's happening. Something is happening in Cana. Something big. The story of the Redeemer, the light of the world. Jesus is doing something at this wedding that's going to go from here. And the disciples fully saw it, and they knew it was their responsibility to go with Jesus to Galilee and to be a part of sharing that light all over Galilee. And soon, in several pages at the end of the life, they were going to take it from Jerusalem to the ends of the world. Like there's something happening here at Cana that's going to spread everywhere. And that was made clear. And if you read this, I love this. Read Isaiah chapter 9, verses 1 through 5. Listen to this, because this is the message of sharing this with the world. It says, but there will be no gloom for her who is in anguish. In the former time, he brought into contempt the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. Now, these Old Testament areas, like they join together. And if you look at it in a map, do a Google search on this, where they join together, right there is Nazareth and Cana. So he's saying something is going to happen right here in Cana. But in the latter time, it was brokenness, it was darkness, it was hopelessness, it was lack of joy, lack of life. Remember all of those things? That's how it used to be. But now he has made glorious the way of the sea, the land beyond the Jordan, Galilee of the nations. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great lighthouse. There's something happening in Cana. Something's changing. There's a change in status. There's a purification happening. There's a change in covenant. What was once lifeless is now full of life. There is something happening here. There's a great lighthouse, and look what happens. Who dwelt in a land of deep darkness, on them has a light shone. You have multiplied the nations. You have increased its joy, and they rejoice before you as with joy at the harvest, as they are glad when they divide the spoil. For the yoke of his burden and the staff on his shoulder and the rod of his oppressor you have broken as on the day of Midian. The Redeemer has come. This is an Old Testament and prophecies that said in Cana a great light is going to shine, the light of the Redeemer. And the Redeemer is going to break oppression and to set these people free. And that cannot stay in Cana. That cannot stay in Galilee. It was prophesied that Jesus would do this in Cana, and the disciples along with him would go to Galilee and begin spreading this all over the world. Again, going back to that 1 Peter 3:15, when people see a hope in you, are you ready to explain to them and to share with them where that hope comes from? When people see something different at you at work, or see something different about your marriage or your relationships or the way you spend your money, your time, your general attitude, when people see a difference in you and they ask you, are you ready to share with them? Let me tell you about my Redeemer. Let me tell you about this Jesus who has transformed my life from water into wine, that he's taken me from being a joyless person to a joy-filled person, full of life and trust and anticipation of what he can do in my life. People will see that. Are you ready to share that news with them? So we have these different levels. Come and see, follow me, share my name, and finally make disciples. Maybe your takeaway from this, maybe your takeaway is who are you pouring directly into? John was writing this so that his disciples could have something to read. He was writing this so he could share this story with a person named Ignatius. Ignatius was John's disciple, and he wrote this so that he could read this with Ignatius and show him this wedding and to pass this joy on into his life. And Ignatius would turn and give that to Polycarp, and Polycarp to Irenaeus, and Irenaeus to Hippolytus, like this line of people that were disciples and made disciples and made disciples and made disciples. They passed the joy and the power of this story on through generations. Maybe Jesus is asking you, if you have come and seen, if you've seen this reality true in your life and you've experienced this joy in this life and you're sharing it with the world, then take the next step and pass it on to someone else. Who is your disciple? Man, this story is full, it's rich. There's so many depths and so many layers of application in our life. And I remember when I was not a pastor, I was working in a restaurant and I saw this start to take place. I was following Jesus, I was trusting him, and because of that, it affected the way that I waited tables. It affected the way that I engaged with customers. I don't know if many of you know this, but there's this invisible line when you're at the front of house and you're all smiles and you're engaging people. You cross that line into the kitchen and you just become a vile demon cursing every single one of your tables, joining in with everyone else, just complaining and griping about life. It's an amazing transformation that happens there. But because of Jesus, when I was doing that didn't happen. I was the same at the front of the house as I was in the back of the house. And the way I interacted with people, the way I interacted with customers, the way I interacted with the stress of the busy times and when everything was just hopping, that eventually started to shine through. That was kind of the life of the party at work. It kind of helped everyone else stabilize, and they saw that something was different about me. And it gave me the opportunity eventually when people were asking, like, why don't you get stressed? Why don't you come back here and just complain about everyone else? It gave me an opportunity to tell them, like, well, because I trust Jesus with my customers and with the stress, and he gives me confidence and he gives me stability in the midst of all these hardships and busy times. And I was able to share with them about Jesus. And man, it's been my life, it's been my pleasure and joy to start passing this off to my sons and my daughter and to be working through this with my wife and to see Jesus give me life in so many different areas. And we're growing in our understanding of life and joy and this covenant and everything that we have in Jesus. We're still seeing this grow even in my life. I don't have it all down, but I am experiencing the power of my Creator in my life. Now, I'm trusting with him that the Creator has created all things and he has turned water into wine and he's making my life new continuously. And I want to share that with the world. And as we hit this point right now and as we wrap this up, we understand this story, we find this beautiful picture, this beautiful reality, this first sign that Jesus does. This first picture that he gives us in coming into this wedding. This beautiful symbol of broken humanity, needing redemption, needing joy, needing life breathed into them. And Jesus steps in and provides the wine, provides the joy, provides the new covenant, and redeems that marriage. That symbol, that allegory is all made true and fulfilled. What happened at the beginning is fulfilled ultimately the end of Jesus' ministry when his body was broken for our brokenness. And when his blood was poured out for our redemption. So as we hold these signs, as we come together right now just to value Jesus and to turn our eyes on him, can we just take a moment and understand what these ultimates are and how we even see these elements here? We see that our humanity at the beginning of time was broken. The image of God in us was broken since fall and since the sin of man, and that brokenness can't be fixed by any rite of purification or by anything that we can do in our human standards. We are broken. But Jesus came. He stepped into our world. He allowed his life to be broken so that he can bring about healing for us. So Jesus, we take this and we thank you for your willingness. You willingly laid down your life. You willingly allowed yourself to be broken for our healing so that we could be restored, so that we can be reconnected to you. Jesus, thank you for what you've done. And then we hold this, the symbol of wine, the symbol of joy, the symbol of life, the symbol of sanctification, the symbol of the new covenant when Jesus stepped into this world and said, only by my blood can you be forgiven, can you be redeemed. Jesus' blood forgives us, it cleanses us, it restores us into what we were meant to do, to bear his image, to again be in a relationship with him where we can worship him and live for him and find life in him is found only in the blood of Jesus Christ. Jesus, thank you for pouring yourself out, for redeeming us, for taking our sin away from us and giving us your righteousness so that we could find life in you. Jesus, thank you for your blood. This week, I just pray that maybe you take some time to go back through and just read this story again and stop at each one of these points and just ask yourself, where am I in Jesus' story of redemption? Where am I? Am I coming to see? Am I following Jesus? Am I sharing his faith? Am I making a disciple? Where are you in this story? Take some time and just take in the fullness of everything that is here. Restudy it and let it breathe life into you. We'll see you next week.
How deep the Father's love for us, how vast beyond all measure, that he should give his only Son to make a wretched treasure. Oh, how great the pain of searing loss. The Father turned his face away as wounds which mar the chosen one bring many sons to glory. Behold the man upon the cross, my sin upon his shoulders, a shame
Thank you so much for joining us today and being so faithful and obedient in giving of your tithes and offerings. We know this is another act of worshiping God with what He first gave us. You can continue to give by clicking on the Give tab on the website, or on the app, or by mailing a check to our Cascade Church office. On weeks that we take communion together, we take a special community care offering. This offering impacts and blesses the lives of so many here in our community because of your generosity. To give to the community care offering, head to our website and click Give. In the drop-down menu is an area to click Community Care. If you know of anyone with a need, we want to hear about it so that we can reflect the light and love of Jesus in our community by meeting those needs. You can email us at info@cascadechurch.org or fill out a digital connect card in the description of this video. As always, we would love for you to share this video with your friends and family. This is an awesome way to share the gospel of Jesus to those around you. We are so excited that you are able to be with us here today. We look forward to connecting with you next Monday at 9 a.m. Have an awesome week. God bless.